Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull, as well as the latest episode of The Enemy Within. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Bull, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of The Enemy Within. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Bull. So let's break down this episode. It's very interesting. Obviously, we have this father named Derek. Him and his wife, well, ex-wife Amanda, are separated and they're going through the whole child custody thing. We as the audience see at the beginning he outright killed his wife, but then we see him on trial for it and everything. And so he's trying to paint a picture of like, oh, it was dark. I was just trying to protect my daughters. Yeah, I had a little bit to drink, but I didn't know it was her until it was too late. Blah, 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 and he ends up being found not guilty, and turns out Diana's his representative. She's his lawyer, and then she calls Bull into this. It's kind of interesting because for her, it's like she knew when it was all said and done that he was guilty because she was on his legal team, so she knew that he did do it, and like she didn't feel right giving him custody of his kids. But there's not much she can do because she can't, legally do anything with that information and give it to the other side because like it's her job to literally give him like the best defense possible too. So it's like it's a whole complicated situation. So she tried to find a loophole around it, and that was Bull getting him to come down to Houston and everything. And so having this little secret spot that they meet up. I'm actually surprised. I'm skipping around this stuff. I was actually surprised that's not what got them caught. I mean, to be fair, Diana was super smart about it. She made sure it was a place that no one would know her, no one would know Bull, so it'd be less people kind of putting two and two together. And interestingly enough, that hotel room, them shacking up and stuff like that together, even though they weren't doing, shacking up, but that whole situation wasn't actually what ultimately undid them. Because I was thinking like, oh, Derek, we find out kind of has money and connections. So I was thinking like maybe he had someone follow them when everything kind of got revealed. But it's like, no, that was just kind of something else that led to that. But I'll get to that soon enough. So Bull's got to represent the girls. Well, essentially, he's representing the grandparents who are trying to get custody of the girls. And that in itself is a whole can of worms because it's like none of the stuff from Amanda's trial, like the whole Amanda's murder trial, could be used against Derek. Like, because he was found not guilty in the whole double jeopardy situation. And that sucks because even if evidence was found like, oh, you were guilty of it now, he's already been acquitted. So it's like, so everything has to be purely on the forefront of like, oh, focus on this being just a child custody case. It's actually interesting because like Texas is one of apparently the only places, at least show says this, of like where if there's a custody case, there can be a jury. It's actually kind of interesting because we never got to see them picking the jury portion of it. I'm curious, were they allowed to pick the jury, or is it just kind of one of those situations like it wasn't a part of the episode? I feel like Bull might have mentioned it, but I don't remember. But it does turn into a situation that obviously, like, Derek's got a drinking problem. So, like, we as the audience already know he's not a good guy. And obviously, as the episode progresses, you find out more and more of just instances of not being a good guy. But obviously, his grandparents, the girl's grandparents want to, look after them and everything. But then it comes out, like, oh, Victor actually has another child, named Jimmy. He never said anything to his wife Sandy in all the years that they've been married like a very long time. And it's sad too because for him it's like the reason why he didn't say anything because it's like it's not like he didn't want to be in that child's life, but the fact is the mother kind of made the choice of like, this is how things are going to go. I'm gonna let this other dude that is like a high school sweetheart or whatever raise him to be like, oh, like Jimmy's his son. And so for him it's like I guess he's always kept an eye out, which speaks volumes. But obviously for Sandy it still pisses off because it's like, you've lied to me. It's like, when I thought we lost our only child, you still held this from me. You had multiple chances where you could have told me, but you didn't. And now because of your inaction, you keeping this, because it's understandable why no one wants to keep it, because it's like, yeah, it's something he's super ashamed of, because it's like, how can you tell this woman that you were about to marry at the time that like, oh yeah, you secretly had another kid by someone, but you're not really in that kid's life? Not necessarily by choice, but I guess for him, it's a situation you could make the argument. It's like, if you really want to be in a kid's life, you could have. That's, once again, we don't know the full scope of the situation, but it's also now it jeopardizes their chances of getting the kids and everything. So, and especially, you had Taylor, digging in deep. And it was kind of interesting because I like that little moment between her and Benny where Benny was like, walks in on her kind of singing her son kind of a lullaby because it's like, so he could sleep. And she's like, you mock, you die. And for her, she kind of looked at this case because obviously, like, she's in a situation where she's divorced and she has joint custody with her son. The fact is that, yeah, they're not on the best of terms, but the fact of the matter is she never once has to question her ex, like her son being safe with her ex. She never even has to worry about her going over there and him shooting her in the back, which is like the complicated thing, because like everyone knows in this situation that he's guilty of sin. Everyone knows. He knows he's guilty of sin. But the fact is no one can really do anything about it, and it just seems like as the case goes on, it kind of feels more and more like he will get his kids in the end. Obviously, Taylor is able to dig up some stuff about basically medical files, and it's like, oh, when they're on a trip to Italy, apparently, Amanda had like a broken cheek bone, and it's like he was behind that. Kind of showing, because he's trying to be all sympathetic, like, yeah, I drank, and I was going through a lot, this and that, blah 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 blah. My marriage falling apart, my parents died. Like, we can be sympathetic, but it's like we already know you're a piece of shit. We're not going to be sympathetic for you. And then the whole situation of like, I haven't drank since the accident, and I love that because it feels even more disingenuous when he says accident, because even Diana talks at one point like, yeah, Derek was literally with the lawyers back at the place, literally celebrating like they had almost already won a trial because of the whole Victor thing that had come out about him having a kid. But even that couldn't really be used because it led to a mistrial, because once again everything kind of came out, because for him it's like, oh, Derek's like, the only person I told that to was my lawyer. She knew that information because I wanted it to be out that, I wanted her to know just in case anything came up at the trial, but it never came up. So even the DA didn't know about it. So how would, Bull and Benny know about it? But it's just like Taylor just happened to come across it a different way, but it still looks a little suspicious, especially when Diana admits like, hey, I am the one who brought Bull here. I wonder what Bull would have done, because obviously he kind of had to lie about the whole aspect of like, oh yeah, this is where I got this trial from, like how I knew about it from a, lawyer who wanted to remain anonymous. But that, like I said, that leads to a mistrial and everything, so... And the grandparents blame Bull for keeping a secret, which is interesting considering the fact that, because for him, it's like, for Victor, it's like, oh, I asked you from the very beginning. And for them, it's like, once again, it's the whole thing of like, you're jeopardizing our chances of getting these kids. Like, we might have fully lost it now because of your lies and deceit. It's like that woman was representing that man who killed her daughter. But it's like, yeah, she was trying to do the right thing at the time, because maybe when she started off, maybe she did believe he was innocent, that it was an accident, it was this and that. But then, as the trial went on, she was like, no, he's super guilty, and she's trying to make up for it now. So, but it was interesting because it took Taylor examining some CC footage to be like, oh yeah, Honey, was it Honey Bear? Like, it's like, whoa, I'm reading Amanda's lips, which that's an pretty impressive skill, since there's no like audio for surveillance footage like that. But it's like, she wouldn't call her ex dad, so it's like one of her daughters had called. And I like how everything kind of ties itself back, because earlier in the episode, Bull kind of references the fact is that earlier, like when Sandy was yelling at Victor, like she came running in, but like, please don't yell at him. And now we kind of understand the context of that, because the last time an argument like that happened, her mom ended up dying, because she was awake when her mom got there and heard the argument, and she saw her dad shoot him. Saw her dad shoot her mom, and it's just like, which that's traumatic all on its own. And then on top of that, like, her dad threatened her, is like, if you say anything about this, then you will never see your sister again. Because for her, it's like, it's not only am I looking out for her, she also blamed herself, because it's like, I'm the reason why mom came over in the first place. Because that was the thing, because that was a big question too, is like, why did she go over there in the first place? What triggered her going over there trying to pick up the girls? And it's like, one of them had called. And it's sad. It's, because it's interesting in the long run too, because this kind of ties back into something earlier in the episode I didn't talk about, was like the whole aspect of like, oh yeah, a guardian or whatever looked into this situation. It was like, yeah, one of the kids was unsure, but the other one was. So it's like, oh, we'll send them to be with their parent again. And it's like, wait, really? No, because Bull was like, should we really be doing this? Because the youngest one was basically saying like, oh, I'll live with my dad. Just because this is a child who misses their father, well, like, lost her mom and misses being at the home. So it's like, it's not really an objective investigation in the whole situation. So that's why that kind of had to be, potentially scrapped. And I thought it was kind of interesting. But that kind of, like I said, circles back to what I was just talking about of like, seeing like the deeper reason behind all that, and it's sad, especially at because Bull had to tell her, it's like, no, like that's what moms do, they come when we need them, so like it's not your fault that things played out. That was obviously your dad's fault, but your mom coming over was because she was worried about you, she loved you. That's what that was, essentially a sign of. And it's sad that things played out that way. Sad that she had to witness that and be put in that situation. But it has a happy ending to it. I mean, the happy ending that you can potentially get out of a tragic situation like this is that they can't get him, even if his daughter was a witness to it, it doesn't change the fact it's double jeopardy, It's there for a reason, but there are reasons like this where you're like, you kind of wish it didn't, but exists. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, there's a reasoning for it. There is a balance to the whole thing. There's the checks and balances to everything. But essentially, it's like, yeah, I can't be tried for that. But it's like, yes, but now you can be tried for witness tampering, which, interestingly enough, and I thought this was fascinating, apparently in Texas, once again, based on what this show is saying, I'm curious. I'd assume there probably is some research done in all this, so there probably is truth to that law. Maybe not, because, like, the fact of the matter is, like, different states have different laws and stuff. Like, I mean, just like different countries do. Like, I know it's weird comparing states to countries, but, I think it kind of works in a certain regard. But it is kind of interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. But in Texas, if you get found guilty of witness tampering, the sentence you were going to get for the original crime gets, is what that sentence of for the witness tampering gets you. It's like, holy crap. So if you were going to get 3 years for like whatever crime you committed, but you witness tampered, you found guilty of that witness tampering, no matter what it is, you would have gotten the 3 years that you did for the original crime. So in his case, he gets life in prison for murdering his wife. So justice is held, anyway. So that still got to sit wrong with the girls anyway too, because it's like, no matter what the circumstances is, it's still a complicated mess, because it's like, that's still your dad, so is all correlating, because it's like all circled around, Bull and Diana and their complicated thing, because Diana hasn't forgiven Bull for the last time. Like, oh yeah, he called her up. It's like, oh yeah, fly out to New York, and then didn't, kind of canceled last minute. And he's been trying to contact her for the past 2 months, and this is the first time they've been in contact subsequently since. And it's like, ooh, yeah, because he's in the doghouse and everything. Let's not forget, obviously he's not going to bring it up, but the reason why that didn't work out last time was because he was trying to get back with his ex, because he thought like, oh, there was something there, like what happened at her father's funeral. But then it's like, it was just kind of a momentary lapse, which is kind of sucky. You kind of jeopardize your own relationship for, something familiar, because you felt like, oh, I guess, because, like, no matter what, there's always going to be something between them. And I think that, I don't know, like, it just ended up being a complicated mess. I'm curious to see if that comes back in some shape or form. Maybe it will. Like, I doubt, like, anything between him and Isabella will ever... Isabel. I always forget, because there's so many shows where it's like there's an Isabella and there's an Isabel, and I kind of forget which one Benny's sister is. I think she's an Isabella, right? It's been a while. I'm blanking. But the fact is, I think where they left things off, it's kind of like, yeah, there's no chance of that ever happening, so I doubt Bull will ever go down that situation. It is kind of interesting, because like Bull's kind of always had these like one-off situations for people over the course of the series so far, but Diana has been the only consistent situation. So I don't know if even they 100% clarify it being like a monogamous relationship or not. At points, it seemed like it was, but then other stuff happened in between. Like I said, they've always seemed like they've kept it kind of pretty open. But I feel like, especially this season, they've really kind of hit the whole, like, monogamy train. At least that's how I feel about it. Well, last season too, but more so this season. At least that's how I feel about it. But, But I thought it was kind of interesting, because obviously Bull was frustrated, and Diana was frustrated, because she's like, now things are kind of going bad, but, Bull was like, yo, tell me what you know. But for her, it's like, no, if I do, I'm potentially going to get disbarred and everything. Like, there's a moral ethics to this whole situation. But when it's all said and done, because like, for Bull, it's like, okay, I can't win this. I can't do what's best for these girls. if you don't give me this information, the fact of the matter is, then what's the point of this room? We can't talk, we can't eat, we can't sleep together. And then it's like, oh, you're a pig. So Bull kind of screw things up there. But when it was all said and done, they did make up in the end. And she has accepted his invitation back to New York. And it's like, oh yeah, hotel room. He's like, yeah, I did forget to set that up. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Also, I love it just being a little nod. It's the whole Marissa situation, because obviously her and her hubby trying to have kids. It's interesting too, because she's not letting Bull know. I wonder why. I guess for her, it's just she's nervous about telling everyone else. Like, I think Marissa probably isn't all that keen on telling people a lot about her personal life. Maybe, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. I guess because it's also like a touchy subject for her. Because of her upbringing and stuff like that, being adopted and everything. So I think that. I don't know. Like, I guess she's just not ready, because obviously she's going to doctor appointments to see about that whole situation. So I guess until something really happens about it, she's not really going to tell anyone that she's even trying, So that'd be something we'll have to, wait and see how that ends up playing out. But like I said, no matter, a sad episode that things kind of played out the way, but, justice was served, and it looks like things are working out across the board. Like, obviously, like, Marissa's taking her steps towards the whole, potential baby situation. And obviously, Bull and Diana are on good terms again. There's always a chance that might not continue for a while. They have a bumpy situation, but I'm interested to see, where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Enemy Within. A lot of interesting things in this episode. Kind of picking up a little bit in certain regards of last week's episode as a whole. Will actually looks a little beaten down, like, and Erica kind of sees that, because for him, he saw it in his eyes. It's something he kind of brought up last episode, being like, oh, I know I could have, turned her. And for him, it's like he saw it in her eyes. It's like, I turned her. She could still be alive right now. We'd be one step closer to Tall. And I think for him, it's like, because he shifted her mind, it made him feel like, okay, like, she done some bad stuff, but we can turn this around. And just, I guess, like, knowing that, like, she could still be alive and helping, and, that he was able to kind of connect with her, maybe that kind of opened him up a little bit, especially because considering the fact is that they had gotten so close. So, her not being around, I guess, he also feels responsible, because he's promising to protect her. Then literally moments later, she gets killed. So I think that's having its effect on him. But the interesting thing in this episode is there's basically a bombing in New Jersey, and it's kind of like, okay, so what's the whole big plot behind this? It turns out that this whole situation connects to this dude who's basically he created the communications network that Tall uses. Now, that was really interesting. And obviously, it's the interesting thing of, like, kind of understanding why a lot of people do what they do. Like, obviously, we understand why Anna did what she did, because she grew up, like, Tall adopted her, brought her up in this world, so obviously that's what she came to believe. In his case, what's his name, like, Sam, he believed in this situation because for him, he was a protester with a woman he cared about, Nadia, and she was imprisoned and tortured and beaten to death. And for him, it's like, helping out with this whole situation is about finding the people responsible. Like, obviously, he's pissed at the U.S., but obviously more so than anything, he's pissed at the guards and the interrogators, the people who actually killed her. And working with Tall is like, well, let me do what I need to, like, to find that person. And obviously, the entire time, like, Danny's trying to break him. It's so interesting because throughout the entire episode, they're doing this little thing. I guess, time is clicking down. So I guess it's just interesting to see basically the entire episode took place from, like, at 9 o'clock in the morning to about, what was it, probably like, 3-something? So it was kind of interesting because I was wondering if that was going to play a bigger role. And the fact is that they just keep, like, showing the time frame. But I guess it's just to show you just, like, how on top of this, like, how, a couple of hours can make the biggest difference because they are on a time frame to the point, like, even Erica was suggesting, hey, we can always send her to, like, a CIA place where they can interrogate him. But Daniel was kind of against that. Did I call him Danny earlier? I might have. Daniel had dealt, was like, no, we're not going to do that because, like, obviously torture doesn't really, there's no guarantee the information you're going to get is going to be useful. And on top of that, not a lot of people immediately break. It still takes a while for stuff like that to happen. Plus, there's like a whole thing of, like, torture kind of being the terrible thing that it is. It's like, So, of course, like, Danny and Will don't want to go down that route. Even, like, Erica suggesting, hey, there's this dude, Kamal, that we could, get his help help us with this whole situation, but he's not going to want to help willingly, because like, hey, him and his country were tight with the CIA until the CIA does what it does, and it's like, oh, it basically helped overthrow his government. It's like, and even Erica later on is like, well, if your government wasn't so corrupt, you wouldn't kind of have to worry about us doing that. Like, we had to step in because your government was a bit corrupt and everything. But they ended up having to snatch him up. They had to black bag him, essentially. It's like, like I said, Will wasn't wanting to go down that route, but kind of had no choice, because when it all came down to it for Sam, it's like, tell me the name of the man responsible for killing Nadia. I will tell you everything that's going on. You don't have to worry about it. Which that in itself, it's like they kind of pushed to a corner, especially because they're against time. It's about saving a lot of people's lives, because the amount of material needed for explosive was like 900 pounds, so it could level an entire building. So, I mean, that's at least what was left afterwards. And so Erica and Kamal, like, their whole conversation was interesting, because the whole thing of, like, obviously, like, they both come from that spy world, essentially, and it's like, oh, we've taken a lot of terrorists out, but, like, even when we did, we took one off the board, 2 more would just pop up in their place. And, it's a whole conversation, and it was kind of an interesting conversation, because obviously, like, Erica's using tactics to, like, it's like, here, I could print this story to basically be like, oh yeah, you helped out, so Tall's going to know you helped out. Whether you actually did or not, it doesn't matter. Why? Because Tall does what he does, because even if he hints that you might have talked, using the Erica situation, he will have you removed from the board just to be safe, because if there's even a small chance that you're a liability, of course he's going to do that. And he's being like, the fact is, you and me, Erica, we run in the same circles. We use this on a lot of people, like this whole fear tactics and stuff like that. And Erica's like, yeah, you might know it, but it doesn't mean it's not still effective against you. So, but what really got me was like the whole thing of like, you've got a son, right? He's about the same age as Hannah, and the whole thing is of like, why did we both get in this? For our countries, right? What are countries? Nothing but a collection of families. And that's where we were affected by this bombing. There are like 8 families that lost loved ones today. So we can't let any more casualties happen. So gave Sam the name of the man responsible for it. Turns out he's dead. It's not, it isn't justice, and that was pissed him off, because it's like, how am I supposed to get justice for Nadia now if the guy's he's dead, he's been dead for like 2 years, a car accident, which is, you can't even say like, oh, it's ironic or poetic justice. I mean, I guess the irony would be in it that Sam has been looking for this guy, and I'm sure Tall has just kind of been stringing him along. I'm like, oh, or at least a guy that gave them a connection, which he gave the description of the guy being like a guy with the scars, so I guess that's going to come up later on, because he's connected to Tall, but for him, it's like just being, you can understand, like, he was motivated by revenge. He kind of did, like, because for him, he tried to justify it too, but really, like, only built the communications network. I didn't actually kill anyone, but even Daniel was like, don't try to kind of vague this up by being like that. You literally making the communications network is what allowed this to happen. Like, don't act like you have no part to play in this, and being like, basically, when it's all said and done, what would Nadia do? What would Nadia say if she was right here? She would want to try and help as many people, wouldn't she? And try and puts her photo in his face. Is like, say it. If you want to say that, say it to her. And even he admits at the end, like, Nadia would have never worked with someone like Tall, so he realizes his mistake. But it's that situation of you're so consumed by revenge, you're willing to take help from anyone, no matter even if it's someone as dastardly as that, just because what you believe to be justice, And you can understand why he did what he did. Does it make what he did okay? No, He helped put together a network that let a lot of stuff get orchestrated. So it was interesting too from the conversation, him being like, "Oh yeah, like, can you got like?" Because they're like, "Oh, we can make a deal," and he was like, "Deal? What about Nemec? Did you promise him a deal when he literally got killed here?" It's like, yeah, he was literally in police custody, and he ended up getting killed. So it's like basically saying like Tall's reach is far, so who's to say I'm safe, when it's all said and done. So that made him super reluctant to talk, because it's like, I'm gonna end up dead anyway. To be fair, you're in that situation talking just like the conversation Erica was having earlier. It just meant that you were going to be a liability anyway. So, but like I said, he was just hurting so much that he just, he didn't want people to suffer, but it was just more so like he was so focused on his revenge, he wasn't willing to really think about all the other casualties that would be brought about because of everything. Well, it was also interesting finding out what this was all about, because basically it was this is all about a bank, but the bank is actually a front for the CIA because it's where they put all their funds, fund their operations and stuff like that. And most people, like 99% of the people working at the bank, had no idea. They're just regular citizens, civilians, thinking that they're working at a regular bank. The guy that died, one of the people that died in the bombing earlier in the episode, he was like the CFO. He was literally the only one who knew, potentially being read in by the CIA about like the purpose of the bank and everything like that. So luckily, when it was all said and done, they were able to stop the bombing. Keaton throwing it down them. Like, he was like, oh, is there anyone, and Bomb Flaw was like, please don't let it turn out that, like, oh, yeah, there actually was someone down there we just didn't know. It's like, okay, I figured that would be just kind of a gut punch. And I was like, I wouldn't expect them to do it, but still, I was worried about that. But it's like, nope, luckily, everyone, was saved. The day was saved, so I did appreciate that Sam gave Daniel that pen. Basically, it represented healing and stuff, because it's like, that's what Nadia did for me. And I thought that's kind of interesting. There's a part of my brain that was kind of like cynical, being like, you might want to check that for a bug or something. I kind of don't get that feeling, especially because he was giving Daniel information at the end of the episode like that. But I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. But it's interesting with all of this because, like, you also have Keaton being scrutinized a little bit by Daniel, because Daniel's like, why are you listening to Erica? Like, do you know something about her that we don't know? He's just like, I just hope you know what you're doing. Because for him, it's like, he humanizes Erica a little bit because he doesn't look at her as the 100% traitor that she is in other people's eyes, because he's sympathetic, because he understands, like, oh no, like, she did this for her daughter. Like, that's something he feels and understands, that no one else knows. But even if other people found out, people might not believe her. They might be like, but who's to say she's lying? Because, like, the deputy chief shows up and she's like, oh, the whole Anna Cruz thing. It's like, once again, it's like blaming. It's like, no one knew Anna was a mole. It's not like, oh, she just became a mole when she worked with Keaton. It's like, no, this was a long orchestrated thing that no one else knew she was a mole. But I guess it's like, oh, you should have done your due diligence and stuff like that. It's like, you're trying to point the finger. For her, it's like the whole story of, like, basically one step forward, two steps back, essentially. And it's just, basically Will's got one more mistake, and then, like, this is his last mistake that he can make with Anna. If another one comes up, he's done. Which, it's like, you should also stop listening to Erica. But it's like, if it wasn't for Erica, we wouldn't have found out about Anna or anything else. It's like, because it's like, how do you know she's not working for Tall? It's like, well, if she was working for Tall, why would she expose a heavy asset like that? Because they literally had to destroy all of, like, the information they've gathered since, well, since Anna's been there, but also everything before that Anna could have potentially seen and told Tall, because all the intelligence could potentially be compromised. So they kind of had to do a heavy ass sweep, kind of a heavy ass shredding, essentially. But I think the argument could be made too. It's like, well, who's to say Erica didn't just expose Anna just to make you guys see that she was useful in this situation, that, it's like, oh, she's an ally and stuff like that, to kind of make herself closer to the team. But to be fair, it's like, she wouldn't have gone about everything the way she did. I mean, you can make the argument, hey, she's making excuses. Like I said, like, there's certain things that kind of lean my brain to be like, is that what the twist is actually going to be, that she is that? Like, it's hard to say, because the whole situation is, because obviously we know, like, the reason why she did stuff in the first place was for Hannah's sake. But now it's like, well, who's to say that Tall doesn't keep that above her head? I mean, does he? I would assume he knows about Erica, especially because of Anna. So that's still something. So, especially because, like I said, there was that thing that Anna said last episode, that it seemed like Erica knew what that meant. It might have been something related to Hannah or something. I don't know. Like, it might have been something that, or at the very least, Erica might know of it because of her CIA days, some stuff that she knew and learned about Tall when she was hunting him down. But, I mean, speaking of Hannah, like, it was kind of crazy, because in an episode, they had to have, like, their meeting in her cell, and, she tried to make the best of it, being like, oh, yeah, it's better than the place I was before. I get music, for an hour once a week. And it's this sad awkwardness to it, because it's like, Erica's there trying to learn everything she can about Hannah. It doesn't make up for the fact it's like, I haven't been in your life for the past 3 years, and I don't even really know the you that's here, because, we get to talk about these little things here and there, but we don't really get to connect as mother and daughter. First time she's hugged her and all this stuff, because she's like, is it okay if I hug you? He's like, can we do that? And Erica's like, I don't care. We're going to do it anyway. And it's like, it's sad because even like she wants to tell something to Erica, but she doesn't get to this episode. I'm wondering what it was. It might be something, because for her it's like, oh, she wants to say something, but she can't quite. Because for her it's like, we don't get to talk about anything private and stuff like that, which I'm curious in the long run, like whether or not that is that going to be something significant, or is it just, you know, something more intimate about her life, like her trying to like, because for her it's like, is this how things are always going to be between us, Mom? Like the fact that it's not having privacy, not being able to be, you know, intimate, like, you know, have these intimate and private conversations. And it's, I don't know, you know, because for Erica, she also told Hannah like, yeah, she could, you know, it's like, can't you use like your, you know, the good work you've been doing to try and come to my, you know, her piano thing? And it's like, well, no, because I already kind of played that card to get this whole situation. Like I already kind of got what I wanted, and that was to be with you and see you. So this whole situation is thanks to that. So, but when it's all said and done, you know, continuing to show that Will does kind of believe, you know, Erica. Like he is, you know, when Hannah calls asking can her mom come to her thing, it's like he escorts her there, and you know, you see Erica, because for her it's like a little big, that window into her daughter's life got a little bit bigger, and it's like that light shines a little brighter in her life again, you know, after being away from her for all these years. And it's just, I don't know, it's a very sweet situation. It just, you're just always waiting for the other shoe to drop in regards of this. So I'm curious to see, you know, what the next episode has in store for us with all of this going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.